Why do I even play video games? So, I've been watching a lot of Archer lately, and one thought kept bugging me. Didn't I play this thing before? I specifically remembered seeing ads of a spy-themed FPS with a comic book aesthetic back in the early 2000s, but its name was on the tip of my tongue. And then it hit me. It was Comix Zone. Nah, I'm just fucking with you, the game is 13. 13 is a first-person shooter developed by Ubisoft Paris and released in 2003 for Microsoft Windows, GameCube and PlayStation 2. The game itself is an adaptation of a Belgian comic book with the same name. And when researching this game, I was surprised to find out that this franchise is larger than I initially thought. It spawned a poorly cast and received miniseries, a forgettable TV show and 2 additional video games. The comic book itself is decent and shares a lot of the tropes and cliches of other European espionage comics, like Diabolik and Largo Winch. 13 was meant to be the first entry in a series, but it was cancelled due to poor sales and lukewarm critical reception. I believe that contemporaneous reviews of 13 were a bit unfair. 13 came out during a time when the feats of Hitman 2 and No One Lives Forever were still fresh in the collective psyche, so expectations were high. When 13 failed to meet those expectations, gamers and critics alike were disappointed. Look, 13 is far from being a masterpiece. It has its fair share of problems. But I do believe that with better timing and polish, 13 could have easily been a modern classic. It's a real shame that 13 has faded into obscurity, because it still has lots to offer, even nearly 2 decades after its release. In 13 you play as an amnesiac man called Jason Fly, who is framed for the assassination of the President of the United States. You wash up on a beach with a bullet in your head, a strange tattoo on your neck, and no recollection of who you are. After you're attacked by a group of thugs and escape, you start piecing your life together as you're drawn deeper and deeper into a sinister conspiracy. The story is very well written and contains a lot of twists and turns that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Major plot details are revealed naturally through semi-interactive flashbacks, which add more visual flavor to the game. I don't want to reveal too much about the plot because the story and the way it's presented are one of the best things about 13. However, I will say that the story has one big problem. It ends with a huge cliffhanger that has never been resolved. On the bright side, piecing together your past, figuring out exactly how you fit into the conspiracy and why everybody's out to get you is very satisfying. 13 runs on a heavily modified version of Unreal Engine 2, which you wouldn't be able to tell because the visuals are made to resemble a comic book. This emphasis on art style over graphical fidelity is the reason why 13 has aged so well and still looks incredible after so many years. The art direction in general is fresh and brimming with creativity. Panels pop up showing the victim's gory demise whenever you perform a headshot, sound effects are shown in bubbles, the screen shakes in a cartoon-like manner if you're close to an explosion. Yeah, no game portrays violence as stylishly as 13. While the game overall has aged very well, certain parts like a few cutscenes and textures haven't. Because the rest of the game looks so good, they stand out like a juggalo at a Mumford & Sons concert. They may irk some people, but they're not a big deal. The voice cast features some well-known talent. Post-X-Files and pre-Californication David Duchovny plays the protagonist, the late Adam West assumes the role of General Carrington, and rapper Eve plays Major Jones. David Duchovny throws one of the weakest performances of his career.
Ow. My head. The girl from the bank. I'm never gonna miss that old bastard.
Most times he sounds so bored, like he didn't care or understand the material. And it's not a case of Duchovny being unsuited for voice work. He was great in Area 51, which came out just 2 years after 13. Duchovny's weak voice work in this game can be immersion breaking, but at least he doesn't have that many lines, so it's fine, I guess. Speaking of sound, we have to talk about the soundtrack. The score was written by several artists from San Francisco based label Future Primitive Sound, and oh boy, it fucking slaps! The soundtrack features an eclectic mix of soul, funk, free jazz and chill hip-hop beats, a perfect match for the noir espionage theme of the game. You could easily see these tracks as part of a Madlib mixtape or MF Doom spitting some villainous rhymes over the jazzy beats. I would go so far as to say that 13 is worth picking up just for the soundtrack alone, if this type of music is up your alley. So the presentation is mostly flawless, but how about the gameplay? Well, 13 is extremely linear and quite short. The campaign takes about 5 hours to beat for new players. While the level design allows for some small detours, it's largely designed to take you from point A to point B. On the bright side, 13 makes up for its short length and linearity with decent, albeit simple gameplay mechanics and a satisfying combat system. The game includes 16 weapons or so, from knives, handguns to assault rifles, bazookas and submachine guns. You can also find single-use objects that can be used to perform non-lethal takedowns, like broomsticks and chairs, or liquor bottles and ashtrays if you want to knock out enemies that don't drape away. While certain weapons are ubiquitous from one mission to the next, others are present only in certain levels, like the crossbow, the sniper rifle and this weird harpoon gun that makes a brief 5-minute appearance. 13 suffers from that early 2000s game design philosophy of taking away your guns from one checkpoint to the next for no apparent reason. Most times the game gives you no story explanation for this, it just takes away your weapons because they don't fit the design of the level, which is very... Levels are decently varied and are packed with small details that add flavor to the world of 13. Early levels are more in tone with what you would expect from a regular spy thriller, while later missions will take you through secret military bases and covert outposts. 13 has a very old school level design with Kevlar vests, helmets and medkits scattered throughout the maps. It's very similar in that respect with older shooters like Doom and Quake and the like. The game puts several gadgets at your disposal like grapnels to climb walls and lockpicks to unlock doors. It's worth mentioning that gadgets are very situational and can only be used in predetermined moments, but they add some degree of variety to the gameplay and some much needed spice to the linear level design. Now, while there's not much worth complaining about in 13, the few flaws that it has are so major that they drag down the entire experience. Firstly, the game uses a checkpoint system. This is fine and all until you realize that checkpoints are rare and distributed haphazardly. Sometimes they are absent from levels completely, forcing you to watch the same cutscenes and scripted events over and over again. Stealth missions suffer the most from this checkpoint system, because detection can lead to a complete restart. The most infuriating aspect of the saving system is that the game doesn't autosave between levels, you have to do that manually. I lost hours worth of progress thanks to this illogical system, but fortunately saves are readily available on the internet. No matter how visually unique 13 still is to this day, mechanically it's very much a product of its time. About half of the game's duration is filled with mandatory stealth missions. My main issue with them is that they're designed to be completed in a very specific way. Wait for the guard to turn their back, knock them out with a chair or whatever, drag their body out of sight, and rinse and repeat until the coast is clear. Moreover, enemy AI is unpredictable in the sense that they'll either spot you as you're about to perform a takedown or ignore you completely. It's clear that Ubisoft tried to distinguish 13 from other first-person shooters and it's admirable, but the stealth missions don't add anything significant to the experience, they just prolong it unnecessarily. Other minor annoyances consist of having to manually switch to your weapons after using gadgets, levels ending with a blunt mission complete prompt, the lackluster progression system, repetitive models, weak puzzles that ruin the pacing, and wonky stair physics. I guess 13's biggest sin is that it feels very much rushed and unpolished. I don't know if 13 was rushed to release, but it could have used a few more months of development time for sure. But even with those flaws, 13 is worth playing for the excellent art direction, tight plot and satisfying combat. 13 is one of a kind in many ways and it's damn tragic that it didn't get a sequel. On the bright side, the remake is planned for 2020, so there might be a future for this series. Or not. It doesn't look that great. Fucking goddamn fucking bitch! So back when I was little, we had this little receiver thing. Guess it was a satellite receiver or something like that. We used it to catch foreign channels, and one of the channels that I spent hours watching when I was little was Game Network Italy. It was this weird gaming related channel, it had a lot of weird shows about gaming trivia and stuff, the hosts were dressed like Pimp My Ride extras, and my favorite thing about that channel, they were called game clips. So these game clips were basically 3 to 4 minute long clips with gameplay and with weird songs on the background, like here's Half-Life 2 with Master of Puppets on the background. Obviously I'm not gonna play that song because I want my channel to survive. Sorry, I'm a bit hoarse. And that's how I found out about 13, like 17 years ago, because it was a 3 to 4 minute clip and they had Outcast Hey Ya on the background, and I've actually been a fan ever since. So why am I telling you this? This was initially part of the original video, but it didn't really fit in with anything else, and when I rediscovered this game 3 weeks ago, all those memories about spending hours watching Game Network, like, they just flooded back, and I had to share this thing with you guys. So if you want to see how gaming media was done before IGN and, you know, YouTube and Reddit and stuff like that, just look up Game Network on YouTube and you'll have a blast. There's not much extant footage of it on the internet, but, you know, this will do, I guess. So thanks for watching my video and thanks for bearing with me, and I'll see you next time.